Saranapala is with us from Sri Lanka in the middle of a power cut and relying on the amount of battery that he has left in his iPhone. So that being so, I think I won't waste time with an introduction. I might have something to say later on in the discussion. But Comrade Saranapala, if you're here, please go ahead. Comrades will understand that we won't see him because there's complete darkness where he is.
Yeah, it's not clear. My picture is not clear.
Yes, sir, we can hear you fine.
Your camera's off. Your camera is off, Saranapala. Your camera isn't switched on.
Yes, the problem is it is the phone.
Yeah, okay. Fine.
We can hear you, comrade. So
yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Now it's okay. Can you see me? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, carry on.
Yeah. Thanks, all comrades, been comrades, and my comrade Pam to organize this discussion, especially because of the situation in Sri Lanka is very worse, and the people are come to the streets, and now you know that the recent periods they are fighting for their rights, especially the government. Made the austerity for the people, so therefore against the high inflation and the all commodities, you know, it's the can't afford for the people. So now we are facing day to day, you know, the struggle and campaigns against the government. You know that as we described, it is. I want to say that comrades Roger made a very good brief for the introduction, and based on that, I can explain, you know, some way, because that all of you know that the Rajapaksa regime came to power 2.5 years ago, and you know that before it, their ruling period was, I think, nearly 18 years. So the Rajapaksa regime started their you know, the ruling capacity last 18 years, except 4 years because the good government the same bourgeois parties Ranil and Maitripal. So that their economic strategy was, you know, the Rajapaksa regime got the lot of loans from Chinese bank and Middle East bank, because they did not move to IMF and World Bank. So that's why because the you know that Chinese bank and the middle class Middle East countries, they offered loans, you know, without conditions. You know that that's why they robbed a lot of money. Because of now we can see that it is publicly that the Rajapaksa regime robbed a lot of money, and now it makes a crisis within the country, especially now. Today we are facing, you know, that the dollar crisis, and so now that's why the excuses, you know, they are trying to. So it's a crisis it's a national crisis. They are going to introduce it's a national crisis, and but we have to consider the things like that. But we can see all the people did not consider, and their slogan is "Go Gota, Go Gota." So it means, you know, the turn down to the government. That is the slogan of the people. Now, last 10, 11 days. You know, continuously, you know, the struggle came to the streets, and they are fighting against the government, and they are only one slogan: "Go Gota, Go Gotas." Go Gotas means, you know, the president of the country should go. But now, you know that the trade union movement and left parties in Sri Lanka, they have no proper energy. enough energy to face this crisis and to propose to the people who are fighting against the government. So that's why, that we can see the leadership of this struggle, most probably the middle class, higher middle class and upper middle class. So both people are gathering and various places in the country, various places. And now yesterday, 3 days ago, all the people came to the city, the Colombo city and the Goldface, they came and they had meetings and they put camps and everything, and they are trying to occupy the places, and they are shouting. Now today also you can see they are going on the campaign very well. But the thing is, the working class very weak, and it is a small percentage represent the campaign, and left parties also very little intervene. So that therefore our position is the go, power to the people. So now we print the posters and placards, and we are also very few people are in the demonstrations and the rally. So we are continuing the things. But now we can see the whole bourgeoisie gathering and trying to find a solution, without dissolve the parliament. They are trying to keep their balance within the government. But however, now today, the 3-4 days ago, the cabinet ministers, all cabinet ministers, except prime minister, so they resigned. They resigned their post, and because they resigned their post, and they allowed to the president to choose again the cabinet with opposition representation. But still, all the oppositions refused to join the government. But they are trying to drag the conspiracy. They are trying to drag the crisis, and they want to allow the fed up for the strugglers, and then they are trying to move again the same situation. But the thing is, now the bourgeoisie same parties proposed, especially Ranil Wickremesinghe proposed to the government, go to the IMF and World Bank. And IMF and World Bank, they have announced that they are ready to consider the request of the Sri Lankan government. But the thing is, we know in the world, where IMF and World Bank intervene, so it may be the big, massive, that a massive disaster for the countries. They are giving the loans, but that strictly they are making the conditions. Condition means they do not want to cut the subsidy. The health and education and transport, all the things that they propose to cut their subsidy. So that is why now the discussion is going on. How do we manage that? Because now the Chinese and Middle East, they stopped giving the money, but they are trying to give some money to cover their loans. It is not physically the loans, but they are offering loans to reduce their loans which they took earlier. So that was the problem. And now the negotiation is going on both sides. And other side also, that within the government, the parties try to make some solutions to the new cabinet with new faces or something like that. But we can't expect the real stability. However, they formed a new cabinet, but I think the crisis is going on because it is very serious dollar crisis within the country. The government can't afford the things, and unfortunately, that's why I explained there is no the party. Actually, it's not so reformist parties also collapsed, but no any other parties. But the situation is very good for the working class and the revolutionists. But the thing is, unfortunately, that we are very weak in the country. But as a group, we are working together with the Frontline Socialist Party, and the JVP. It is they are having campaign independently, JVP, because the JVP wants to move to their electoral victory, because they are trying to use this crisis for their future electoral victory. So that is the all the oppositions also, they are trying to make get this crisis benefit for their electoral victory in the coming elections. Otherwise, that's the problem actually. So otherwise, altogether, if altogether forced to government withdraw their positions and dissolve the parliament, I think we can get the new regime, and also we can put forward our slogans also on that basis. So this is the briefly I explained, comrade, because it's lack of my English vocabulary. It's a very small vocabulary. That's the problem. So then I stopped my speech and I invite the comrade to participate. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much, Comrade Saranapala. A great achievement, in fact, speaking not just, of course, in a foreign language, but in very, very harsh conditions, as we can see, and in a very difficult objective situation. There are a lot of points which obviously will arise in discussion, but because of the limited time scale that Comrade Saranapala has with us before his power runs out, I'm going to ask for questions straight away. Any questions, direct questions to Comrade Saranapala? If not, then
Roger.
on, yes.
Yeah, let me ask some questions in relation to this national government. Do we think that this national government can actually come about, given the tensions within the different bourgeois parties? And B, what effective campaign is being waged from below, and what program are the working parties putting forward now to be able to ensure that the burden of all this catastrophe is not falling directly on the workers?
Yes, you know that the national government, the proposing by the present government, it is come from the ruling party, national government, but the opposition opposed it, because they are trying to make trouble for the government, and they want to dissolve the parliament, and also they need an election, the election. That's why they retreated to the national government, and now they are trying to make a government, getting some supporters from bourgeoisie, not as a decision of the bourgeoisie, but they are trying to catch the people to form a government. We can see now it won't happen. The national government won't happen recently. It is going on. Another question, Comrade made, the left parties. It is the LSSP and CP. So now we are so-called left parties. They are with the government. They are part of the government. So they are not left parties actually. And another parties is here, the small groups, that our groups and the CWI groups is there, and the USEC group is there. So all the small groups, but especially the USEC groups, Dr. people, former Vikramababu Karunaratne, our Samaj party, he also proposed to the interim government to face the crisis. But it won't happen. It's still going on. The crisis, day by day, it changed the mood of the struggle. That's why the only political group which we lead. So we put as a slogan, because we don't have we did not put forward the program. But we put forward a slogan, the Gota, it means the go government, and get the power to people. So we did not put a working class, because there's no enough working class involvement this struggle, because they are working. So they are working, and they are participating partly. The majority of the strugglers come from middle class, higher middle class, and upper middle class. So they also trying to they do not want to make it make it happen. The revolutionaries attitude, they want to keep it traditional, progressive, the so-called progressive limited. So that's why they are proposing to only go taboo, but they do not put forward another government, form another government, or dissolve the parliament or something like that, because they need to keep their position on the positions and their living conditions. They want to protect their living conditions, and also they are trying to force to the government go IMF and World Bank and discuss with IMF and World Bank and save us, get the loan and save us, save the people. But they did not make it openly. But we can see that their idea was in behind. That is their idea, because they forced to the IMF and World Bank. There is no powerful left parties, and the so-called left parties is that the JVP. It was the party, the petty bourgeoisie party, and sometimes they moved to the government also last period. They supported to Rajapaksa also last period, but they are not actually the left parties, but only small three groups, the working class, but it is very weak in this time. And so that is the situation, and also that is the event. We lost actually working class lost their chance.
Okay, yeah, thank you. If there's any more direct questions, I want to call Pam in, because she was on a visit there very recently. But again, not to waste the limited power of Saranapala. Are there any more direct questions to him? Ian, is that a question?
Yeah, there's a couple of quick direct questions. Just about the communal issue, seeing as they had a terrible civil war and terrible conclusion to it about 10 or 12 years ago under this same crime family that's running the place again. Have the protests brought people together across that boundary in any way? And also, in terms of the bourgeois parties, not the LSSP, but the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, if I remember the name right, the main sort of centre-left party historically. To what extent is that fully a bourgeois party, or is it the kind of two parties in one in any way, like the Labour Party has been? Because I think they had a socialist ideology formally, but that might just be a formal thing. But I think Rajapaksa actually came out of that, and it's almost a fascistic character. So is that part of the degeneration of the centre left around the world, or something more specific and local?
Comrade Saranapala?
Yeah. It's a very important question, because the Socialist forces, the present regime came to power use Shonist forces and monks and temples and everything, because they were the heroes in 2009. They smashed the struggle of North struggle. They smashed and they defeated the Tamil Tigers. But actually, it is not the Tamil Tigers. It's a problem of the Tamil Tigers, but the Tamil people's liberation struggle. They crushed. And at the same time, the southern people, they thought that it is a heroes of the nation. The Rajapaksa is the heroes of the nation. Then they voted, vehemently the high majority the last election, because the monks and everybody organized to come Gota to power the last election. So they used as earlier I explained, 7,000 temples. They organized 1,000 votes for Gota, because that was their slogan. The all monks, they try to use these things. So therefore, it is now today. But however, the Shonist forces are very, very weak. So they did not come to front row to protect the government, but they are silenced, because they can't face the people of protest. And so if they come, then they will the Buddhism will finish in this situation, because the people came to the street and fight against the bourgeoisie. And also then if they come, normally the people protest to the Buddhism and the clergy also. So then they are very, very carefully they are thinking it, and they do not come forward to protect the government. Another thing is the LSSP and CP, as comrades know, that they betrayed the working class and they lost now into the thing. And Freedom Party also very the splitted last 10 years, they splitted, and now it is a very small party. It is very small party, but we can say the all bourgeoisie restructure the parties. The UNP also very weak, only one member of parliament, UNP, and Freedom Party only 11 members of in the parliament representation. So they were also becoming very weak, and now they are going to vanish from the people. And instead of that, the new party comes, new bourgeois party under the leadership of Rajapaksa family. So now they are the new governing party. So that is the situation in here. But I think this time, this crisis will solve a lot of problems of the bourgeoisie and other things, because the problem is actually the comrade asked that we are left here, we are very weak, and we can put forward any slogans, but no majority of the people in the struggle, the working class struggle, because normally this time, this period, if we could call a general strike, so it may be definitely, we can throw out this government, and we can establish the social democrat government also, but no social democrat. Again, that petty bourgeoisie and bourgeoisie come again if the government dissolve. So that is the situation, comrade, here in Sri Lanka now today.
Okay. If there's no more questions, I'll ask Pam to come in. Is it a quick question?
I think he's clapping.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's a clap.
Okay. All right. No, Pam. Oh, yeah, sure.
I think somebody just wants a missing to the meeting.
Yes, that's what I mean. Go on.
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions, but if nobody's waiting to speak at the moment, I can say a little bit more. I was over in Sri Lanka about 2 months ago, and I met up with Saranapala and Deva, who's with him at the moment. He's with him in Sri Lanka. So, I mean, I had a bit of a tourist eye view of it. I can't say that it was just before this stuff really kicked off, and I know at the time that people were complaining about rising prices, and there was lots of anger and frustration and a contempt towards the present government. So those are the only things I picked up. You know, as you go as a tourist, you only really see a superficial view of things. Well, I did meet some of Saranapala's comrades and I had discussions with them. So I had a couple of questions to ask. So if I start with the questions, I've been following events on First News, which is the Sri Lankan news broadcasting. It's in English. And it seems very, very favourable to the protesters. I couldn't imagine the BBC broadcasting like that about protests here, because they do everything they can to avoid it. It claims it's the People's News channel, and I just wonder what Saranapala thought about that. Just the other question is, I was going to ask, is that Imran Khan lost a vote of no confidence today. There's a call in Sri Lanka for Gota to go and for a vote of no confidence. And I know there's been moves, I think there are moves to a vote of no confidence. And he's absolutely refusing to bud. He's just completely ignoring everybody. I just wonder if Saranapala thinks there's any chance that he could lose a vote of no confidence and be put out of office.
Saranapala?
Yeah. Pam, say again clearly, because I couldn't follow you.
I keep forgetting. Saranapala has trouble with my northern accent. He can understand southerners, but not me. I'm asking you, the news
for you.
Okay, well, two questions. Imran Khan has lost a vote of no confidence in India. Do you think that might happen to Rajapaksa?
No.
You don't think? Well, answer that question. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because they are talking impeachment, and the opposition take the signatures of the parliamentarian, but we don't think. Personally, I don't believe it may be the majority against the government, against Gota. Okay. Yeah.
Have you another question?
The other question was, I have been watching the reports on First News, your TV news channel, that there is an English version. There's been a lot of reporting about the protests, which have been absolutely amazing all over Sri Lanka. Yeah. Do you think they're all people from lots of people, different people are on the demonstrations? Do you think they're all middle class people, or do you think there are ordinary people on as well? The other question I wanted to ask is, do you think First News supports the working class? Is it a people's news channel?
The majority of the strugglers, campaigners are middle class, definitely, because a lot of the people are coming with cars and put horns, that they're running here and there, and also there are some places, they built some tent, and some doctors, engineers, and some higher level people are crying, that the things go, only that. And as well as upper middle class also they are, among the campaigners. But we judged, we also participated, and we judged the small quantity of the workers, and little more than the students of the university students, and the youth also there. But the main forces, the leadership of the campaign, middle class, clearly, because that's why I told you that they are trying to keep this government and get the solution from the government. That's why they are forced into Gota, resign the government. But it is the demand of bargaining. Bargaining means they need a new cabinet and go to the IMF and World Bank and negotiate and get the money and loan and save us. That was their slogan. That's why I told that the majority of these campaigners are middle class.
Okay, Pam, you still want to say something or ask a question?
I haven't got any more questions to ask. I had made some notes. Sorry, but Saranapala's actually covered most of it already. I can go into some of my notes if you want me to, or shall somebody else have a turn and I'll come back later.
Okay.
So I think we can assess the situation coming 2-3 days. But I personally, I guess most probably there may be a compromise. Compromise means within the parties of the parliament. So they will discuss and compromise, and they will go to IMF and World Bank, because now IMF and World representative of the IMF and World Bank was starting to talk about Sri Lanka. So be calm, and government should consider, and government should allow democracy, and they must start. We are ready to discuss with the government, and like that they are indicate to the people and strugglers, we are ready to talk with the government. The government must come, because from the beginning of the Rajapaksa regime decided not to go to IMF and World Bank, because there was some tendency within the government opposed to the IMF and World Bank. That was the thing. Still, I think Mahinda Rajapaksa, Prime Minister, against go to the IMF and World Bank, and they always they are trying to go to the China and Middle East and continue the system they made. But that system is very, very, very horrible, because we lost a lot of money, and the Rajapaksa family and Rajapaksa client, so they got very big money people, and they now all of them are very rich now. So that is their tactic to rob the money. So I think that is the thing. So however, now it move. We can see the color. They are going to move to IMF and World Bank.
Okay, thank you. Have we got questions still, or are we going into general discussion? If it's discussion, that's fine, but I want to put myself on the list too, if that's acceptable.
Roger?
Are there any direct questions first?
Yeah.
Go on.
Roger? Yeah. Look, what are the slogans that your party is putting forward? What are we saying? What slogan, and are we mobilizing and participating in the demonstrations, or are we saying that these are middle-class demonstrations and not participating?
Yeah, you know that this is the majority of the middle-class leadership of this campaigner. It is not we can't brand it. It is a middle-class campaign, but it is a mix of people all together. You know, some part of the students, some part of the youth, some part of the trade unions, and all are here. But majority, you know, the middle-class people headed by the campaign. So normally now during these days, and also our slogan was "Go Gota, power to the people." That was our slogan, power to the people. But it is not mature to the power to the working class. I think personally, it was not mature to this situation. So we put forward, go Gota, power to the people. So now, personally, I discussed with our comrades to the structure for the power, shadow power. We have 25 districts in the country, and 25 committees of the districts, and so all together we can elect the National Assembly and the things, you know, that the active action committee of these representatives, and also it's like Soviet, but it is not matured. But we are discussing for that to propose, because no one proposed the structure for the get power and the how continue the country.
Right. David, is your hand still up? Do you still want a supplementary question?
No, all for now. Sorry, I'll
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Then Richard, Dominic. Richard, have you got a question? You're muted.
Hello.
Richard.
Hi, PD.
Hello. Yeah.
Good to hear from you. We discussed this so many years ago when I was in Colombo. The structure, the class structure of Sri Lanka, the dynamics of the Sri Lankan revolution, and many of the same issues that we've previously discussed manifest themselves again in the crisis today. Clearly, Sri Lanka remains a country which is super exploited by international capital, but not just by Britain, European Union, USA, but also in the case of Sri Lanka, very clearly by China. And we discussed that when I was there 12 years ago. And how much more is that the case today? That we discussed when I was there the huge debt that the country owed to the IMF and to the imperialist powers. And from what you have said, that remains just as much, if not more, of a burden today. Now, with the crisis in agriculture as a result of Gota's crazy reforms 2 years ago, with the crisis in tourism as a result of COVID, with the crisis of exports in the garments industry, and with the terrible increases in the price of foodstuffs and fuel, Sri Lanka's foreign reserves have almost collapsed. And we see that even in February this year, the situation was that you only had $2.3 billion in foreign reserves after a 70% collapse over 2 years. And it's dropped in the last month alone to 1.94 billion. The trajectory, the direction is towards bankruptcy unless the foreign debt is removed. Now, the International Monetary Fund know this, and that is why at the talks, which are scheduled, I think, for the end of this month, they're going to propose rescheduling the debt so that they get something back rather than nothing. And the Chinese are going to suggest the same thing. They're going to try to torture Sri Lanka for longer, more slowly, extend the pain in order that they get something back. So who has got to put forward for the negotiations with the IMF? Swami from the central bank, Devarajan from Georgetown University in America, and from the World Bank, and Kuri from the IMF, a former director of the IMF. So Sri Lanka's team to negotiate with the IMF is made up of bankers from the IMF, the World Bank, and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. What greater example could we have of the way in which these negotiations are being conducted, but really within the structures of international capital? Now, you've said, and I'm sure you're right, that there is a huge number of infuriated and enraged, desperate middle-class people. Many of the middle-class people that we met in Colombo when we were there together are street traders, but many of them also will be owners of small businesses, their children, students, they're also teachers. And then we've also got all of the factory workers in the garment industry. We've got the agricultural laborers in the eastern part of the country in the tea plantations. We've got desperate seasonal workers out of work because of the collapse of the tourism industry. My question, and it's taken me a long time to come to it, is how can we bring the working class to the head of the movement against the price rises, against the IMF, and against the government? Because if we don't bring the workers to the head of that movement, we won't have power for the people. We'll just have power for another faction of the ruling class.
Yeah, it's a very good contribution, Richard. It's okay. All the things you made very clear and correct and clear. Your question is how do we get the forward to the working class? Last 3 months, especially from January, the time to time, they started to hike the prices of the all commodities, and time to time we are trying to gather in and have some campaign, means that picket line and the things. In the same time, the teachers came to the struggle, their salary struggle, and it was end with little success. But the thing is, as a whole, that normally the last decade we saw the working class made a struggle with their own workplaces demands. They do not consider the common demands of the people, because it's a bad tradition developed in Sri Lanka, because 1980s strike was the last the working class center in Sri Lanka, and it was collapsed as we discussed. Actually, Richard said that everything we discussed the past. And after 1980 strike, we couldn't build this type of unity of the trade unions even today. So that was the main problem in Sri Lanka. And there are the bank employees, they are conducting small trade unions, and UNP, UNP, some pro-UNP trade unions and pro-government union. And there are some small center, including our representation. We represent some banks and teachers and some office workers. So it is a very small. It is a very small quantity of the when we consider the Sri Lankan working class. And we put forward it's not the go out the government and take the power to the people. So that was the slogan we made. 3 days ago we had a campaign, isolated campaign, and after that, yesterday and today we also joined the campaign, but it is very very small amount. Actually, our center altogether 175 comrades over there, but it is when we consider the gathering, it is very small amount in the practical situation. That is the problem, but we are finding how do we move that, because the thing is it's a common demand. That it is not the problem of their workplaces. This is the common demands for the whole people in the country. So that's why we want to train them to fight the common demands and put forward to the revolutionary ideas.
Right. Dominic or John?
It's Dominic. Yeah, just thinking about this, the same question Richard was or the same slogan Richard was talking about, this power to the people, because I'd agree with him. It's just going to mean power to the bourgeois.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to work. They've got the apparatus, they've got the mechanisms and all the rest of it. And I think, to my mind, I'm not very good at this, but I think we've got to put forward what we used to call transitional demands, not demands for revolution, not demands for, power, because we haven't got the strength, we haven't got the ability or anything else. So I would think the first question would be, who stole the working people's money? And I think that's what I would be asking. Then I'd be asking to cancel the debt to the rich world capitalists. And the other one would be to open the books, to see what's been going on with the economy in Sri Lanka, and so on. And I think that's just thinking now, that some of the basic questions I would think might be useful. In the comrades' voice is not that loud because of the numbers, but the point is to increase the numbers, to reach out to people and reach out to them with slogans that they'll understand, and explain in the slogans what's been going on to an extent. So I just leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, quite correct. The comrade make the contribution is there. I accept because now it comes, the IMF and World Bank, and now today they are moving to this discussion, and now the people talking about some sort of people talking about how what are the conditions they are going to forward, and they are waiting. They are wait and see. So the World Bank is going there. So therefore, now our group discussed about against the IMF. How do we create a slogan against IMF? So now we are discussing on it now recent time.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to say I put my hand up only to signify that I do want to participate in the discussion, but I won't jump the queue. So next is Comrade Aman.
Thank you, Roger. First of all, thank you for the introduction. I think the overall speech actually gave me at least a very good idea of what's going on. That's one thing. Second point is, I don't know whether that is more of a question or perhaps something similar that we had experience of in Iran. Back a few years ago, there were mass large demonstrations. There were the fights between the different factions of the ruling classes, who were actually one was forming one thing and the other was forming the other in terms of resolution for the situation of economy. And it would not have benefited either way, so far as the working class was concerned. Our agenda at the time was to say that, number one, the working class would have its own agenda. Would have its own difference and putting its own way forward. I think the fact that you said that the Prime Minister must go is one thing, which I think is largely, I would have thought, largely a demand of the working class anyway, which is very good. And I think that's very appropriate. But the question is, how does that differ to the rest of the factions of the ruling class, whether it's IMF ones or Chinese ones or any other one? The difference should probably be more important here to identify as how would the working class want the departure of the Prime Minister differ to the others. If it is the case that another faction is also calling for the departure of the Prime Minister, how would we differentiate that? And I think that's probably one thing which might need further exploration, or at least I don't know how that is going forward. Number two, I think the idea of the middle classes being in there because they have got less to lose compared to I think, a large number of the working class. For them to come out would mean at the time that they think that there is some hope of winning and gaining something, rather than actually the level of organization, although that the two interact. But the question for them, I think, if I was working in one of the textile factories, I would have thought, okay, if it is the case that it would be just a change of one faction to the other on the top, why would I participate? So what would be the difference in here? I think probably is more important in terms of what is our working class difference to the other factions in the current situation, which probably signifies the way that the working class would be organized around the slogan. That's it. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Agree. Yeah, agree.
Saranapala, you don't want to make a comment?
Yes, I think Aman's contribution is okay. But let's see that how we manipulate the ideas and go ahead. So it's okay.
Okay. David?
Comrades, the crisis that we see in Sri Lanka is actually an example of the crises which are going to be hitting everywhere in the former colonial world. It's not unique. What we have is a very weak national bourgeois, full of pretensions, full of ideas, full of words, and absolutely incapable of taking society forward. Their greatest achievement was that they succeeded in a civil war. In other words, they decimated their own people. They couldn't solve the national question, and it had to be resolved by brutal force, the most brutal war that anyone could imagine. And people are still staggering, from the weight of that war. Yeah? And mistakes have been made on the workers' movement, but I'll come back, on that, how we can try and pick up and repair some of the damage that was done, in the past. But we do find now that it's blown around like a feather in the wind. It thought that the Chinese would be nice to them, so it gave all kinds of concessions. And now the Chinese are being nasty. They're just the same as any capitalist imperialist power, with maybe not with all the guns, but certainly, with the power of money. They've made extensive loans, and there's rebuilding of this and that in terms of the port. But it's not led to productive development. It's just led to more facilitation of the infrastructure, which is not changing the basic colonial conditions of the economy, which is to serve in the global world, provide tea, provide entertainment, and provide some basic other facilities in terms of for global capitalism. And yet not that much. In some ways, it seems to be far less successful when we make the analogy, particularly with Bangladesh, which was absolutely in the pits 30 years ago, where it had to import all its food. At least now, Bangladesh is exporting rice. I'm not saying that therefore it's a model at all, but it's the bourgeois there at least have wriggled and tried to do something. At least they're not having to pay to import food, and they have other other advances. So the Sri Lanka bourgeois is extraordinarily weak and pathetic, and as it's buffeted around, and all it is going from one lender to the other, asking, pleading piteously, please give us a break. Now, when we see something like that, the working people, the middle class is approaching destitution. So obviously they have to be out there, and they'll be there in the numbers. That doesn't mean that's a reactionary force. I think we've got to see that as a positive development. We don't call teachers middle class. Well, they are middle class in a sense, but they're part of the workers' movement now, very much so, and they could play a leading role in terms of organizing. You've got need educated people to get out there and sign people on and help with minutes and all the rest of it, to be able to help organize, a movement. And maybe, we should look and see, what's happening. Not that we concede to their petty bourgeois aspirations to become shop owners or anything of that kind, but actually look at it fairly sympathetically. So I'm just concerned to see that we have a very positive, or a very, maybe more, just a clear working class program, which maybe seem going further than, might be possible, but at least to not just to attack the IMF, which is absolutely basic, but also to expose the Chinese party or Chinese imperialism in a sense, Chinese participation in globalization, which is putting the weight down on the Sri Lankan working people, to clarify for people in Africa and in Asia the character of the Chinese external policy at the moment, to put pressure on them. And the same with, I'm shocked to hear that someone from Georgetown University, just down the road here, is also involved in all this, but then to call on the American workers to be able to give support, because it's right here in DC, where all these conspiracies are being hatched. And this, I was speaking to a group of activists yesterday, and I think something could be done to be able to extend our links, with the American workers in DC and elsewhere, to say that we cannot accept, the way in which the working people have all the burden placed on them. But maybe the question is not just the slogan, it's also to help fill out the analysis, to see this weak bourgeois. It's not really a full bourgeois at all. It's just a national elite, which is being bounced around and incapable of leading the nation, and to see how this can become part of an international movement and therefore also an international revolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to comment, comrade? Saranapala, you want to say anything?
No, Roger, it's okay. Now the thing, all the contribution was positive for us to listen and to consider. Then I can discuss with my comrades the idea that put forward all the comrades here.
Okay. Any other comrades want to speak? Question or contribution? Well, I'd like to make a few comments. Perhaps I would say that this uprising, which is taking place in Sri Lanka now, is probably the most acute, but it's only one in a constant series of convulsions that have taken place in Sri Lanka since independence in 1948. There is never, well, I won't say never, but it would be hard to find examples where there were more spasms, if you like, of crisis in the history. And it's particularly important and it's particularly well known, I think, to Marxists, because Sri Lanka was a bit of an exception to the colonial world generally. The freedom of Sri Lanka came about largely through the struggles and the efforts of Trotskyists who played a leading part in the liberation movement. The founders of the Lanka Samasamaja Party had actually learned their Marxism in London in the 1930s from Ted Grant, and when they left London and they went to India and participated in the freedom struggle during the 1940s and played a heroic role there, and then established a mass workers' party in Sri Lanka from the beginning. And as a result of their influence, we had in 1953 already, there was a huge national uprising, what was known as a hartal, which is kind of general strike plus almost insurrection, which was sparked off by a tripling of the price of rice. And soon afterwards, the bourgeois government, the UNP, was overthrown and replaced by a new opposition party, which has been mentioned already, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which was not a socialist party at all. And it was actually campaigned on a similar chauvinist platform. But in 1964, a fatal mistake was made by the leaders of the LSSP, that they joined a Popular Front government. There was a Popular Front government led by the SNFP alongside the Communist Party and the LSSP. And the new coalition did bring in some reforms which were a shining light to the colonial world, if you like. They nationalized the banks and several industries. They established a national health service, which I think still survives in some form right to the present day. They provided free education right up to university level. And as a result, Sri Lanka was actually a very developed and, if you could put it this way, a more civilized example, a shining light, if you like, in the Indian subcontinent from that point of view. But having joined a Popular Front government, the LSSP had by then degenerated into little more than a traditional social democratic reformist party. And as a result, there was all kinds of disappointments, compromises, betrayals. And in 1971, there was already an armed uprising by the youth. Unfortunately, it was of the Sinhala youth. It was a communal movement. It had radical overtones, but it had a communal policy of hostility to the Tamil population, which they saw as obstructing their hopes for administrative jobs, because the Tamils had been used as, for instance, the Asians were used in the African colonies by British imperialism as a kind of administrative caste. But then, in any case, within the LSSP, there was a revolt also, and that's where I had the privilege of spending a lot of time, like other comrades here, in Sri Lanka. But for most of the 1980s, I was based in the Indian subcontinent, and I made many visits to Sri Lanka until at one point I was deported, and that was the end of that. But I was at the conference, which was a split from the LSSP, and the Nava Samasamaja Party, the new Socialist Party, was formed. That's where I first met Comrade Saranapala. And soon after that, they organized a general strike in 1980, which was a major event, and which tragically, perhaps it was, I don't know what Comrade Saranapala would say now, perhaps it was premature, perhaps it was a little bit adventuristic, but it did lead to a defeat. And gradually, if you like, we had the complete dismantling of what had been a very powerful labour movement, which was a shining light to the colonial world or the ex-colonial world, and particularly in the Indian subcontinent. And then you had, of course, all kinds of even worse convulsions, including the secessionist movement of the Tamils in the north and the east. And I can't resist giving a little anecdote that when I was in Sri Lanka in the late 70s, and I spoke at a meeting in Jaffna, and at the end of the meeting, Jaffna being in the Tamil north, and I was approached by a couple of rather dodgy-looking characters who said to me after the meeting, it was a very good meeting, but we'd like to ask your advice. We would like to start a guerrilla movement in order to, to fight for independence for the Tamils, and I advised them against it, so they didn't take my advice. And we saw what happened: absolute bloodbath, a terrible cataclysm, if you like, which not only put the Tamil population into a state of absolute defeat and prostration, but also, of course, reinforced the communal tensions which had already existed among the Sinhala population, and particularly among the Sinhala youth. And we also had a new JVP uprising, which became very actually some of our comrades, some of the comrades of the Nava Samasamaja Party fell victim to that. So comrades who were murdered by the JVP in the south, and also Tamil comrades who were assassinated by the Tamil Tigers in the north. Now, out of all this, it's actually a ray of hope that we have Comrade Saranapala. We have there are only fragments left of the left, and there are of course, as everywhere, it's littered with little scissions and fragments and so on of earlier parties. But we do we must say that Comrade Saranapala is, if you like, one of the treasures of the heritage of the past, and he is beginning to assemble. He and his comrades in the Socialist Party of Sri Lanka, for instance, they stood in the presidential election recently, and although now the left party between them get hardly a couple of percentage points in the elections, nevertheless, it was gratifying to see that the comrades of Saranapala's party did get a substantially higher vote than the other left parties, what is left of them. And I do think there that the points that the comrades have made, that we have to come forward with clear, sharp socialist policies that are based on the ideas of the socialist revolution, and are not just simply bland slogans. Power to the people really means nothing. we don't recognize such an entity as the people because it's a deliberate phrase to paper over the class divisions in society. But we also recognize, I am a bit surprised to hear that it was a middle class movement. I would say that when you have an entire population which is up in arms and demanding the downfall of the existing government, then that is a revolutionary situation. It's actually a situation of insurrection, it seems to me, but without any kind of conscious expression or conscious leadership. And the task is to find those slogans in which you can raise the sights of the insurgent people beyond simply get rid of this president or this prime minister, but to get rid of the class which is sucking your blood on behalf of the international predators, which, as comrades have said, are not only the traditional imperialist countries, but also in particular the Chinese regime, which is squeezing Sri Lanka to a situation of absolute mayhem and starvation. So that's all I'd like to say. Thanks. Any more, comrades? Comrade Saranapala, are you still with us?
Yeah, your contribution also correct and clear. I agree your interpretation the Sri Lankan situation, especially the past period and the history of left and the present situation. It's okay.
All right, any other comrades? David.
Sorry, Roger, I just put a hand up without wanting to cut across anyone else, but I was going to make some proposals, arising from this really important meeting. My proposal, which tell me if already some things have been done, but we should gather together, all the ideas. We should have articles in the paper, maybe summarizing something of what you've contributed, Roger, in terms of the background. But much more important that we'd have from our comrades contributing, first-hand reports of the impoverishment of people, the fact that exams can't even be written now because there's no paper. I mean, it's not just another little crisis. This is devastation. And somehow this is what's coming in the colonial world, this and in the advanced capitalist countries, all held off a little longer, where currencies are stable and the banking system's more robust. But, this is what working people are being faced. I hate to mention it, but in South Africa, we've had a devastating rise of communalism with, it's almost too hard for me to say, with Zimbabwean workers slaughtered on the streets by mobs. This is the degeneration of society, and we've, every stand we make in every country, is a rising hope, for humanity as well as the working people. So what I propose is we could gather together what we've got. Pam mentions some of the news which is coming through on a relatively impartial news agency. Let's study this and make it a bit of a study project so that we keep our heads together and pull together what we can. I'd be keen to, I made some interesting contacts yesterday in the discussion on the AFL-CIO yesterday, and maybe those groups of people could actually take forward, resolutions of support to the movement and also pressure on the IMF. I was just outside the bank of the, if I'd known that this fellow from Georgetown University was just down the road, we at least put a sticker up to name him and his disgrace. I mean, it's really, there is a movement here, and we've got to plug into it too, to make sure that even in the citadels of imperialism, another voice is heard, and we'll do something about it. Anyway, those are just some proposals which are, to take the discussion forward.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, Roger, now power is, it's becoming less and yeah.
Okay, you better come in quickly with anything you have to say.
Yeah. I don't
David,
think that.
sorry.
Sorry, I don't think that it no need summing up, but the discussion was very fruitful discussion, and I got understand and I got educated.
Okay, thank you. And please convey to all your comrades our solidarity, and we hope we can continue the discussion, perhaps under better conditions.
You have to discuss then the our document to the brink of our, our network, the WIN network.
Okay, are there any other comrades, any contributions? Yes, Pam.
I've just to point out, I've posted in the chat the news channel we've been talking about. It's just well worth watching it if you want to see, the extent of what's going on in Sri Lanka. But I've not got a lot to add. Saranapala said it. Everybody else has said every other bit now. So, sorry, I'm going to talk for the sake of it.
Yeah, Pam, you can ask questions and I can reply, in writing. So then you made an interview with me, then you can get more details. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll continue this discussion. I hope that we'll have meeting apart from in the Sunday WIN meetings. I hope we'll continue contact at any time of your convenience with the comrades in Sri Lanka. Yeah. And if nobody else has anything to say, I think we should maybe close the meeting now. I'll just announce that next week we will not have a meeting. We'll take advantage of the fact that it's an Easter holiday to give ourselves a little bit of a break. So we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. You'll get notices about what the topic will be. Any other comrades, any announcements or anything you want to say before we close the meeting?
Yeah.
Roger, just a short point on Belarus. I think, Roger, you put out the notices. Comrades will have seen this. Belarus is in the front line of a war. The working people of Belarus, as well as the Russian working class, we're not separating our nations in that way. The Ukrainian working class is going through unprecedented crisis and horrors. And, in all the midst of all of this, there's a union, REP, the Radio and Electrical Workers Union, which is standing for class solidarity at this time. Marvelous, marvelous, right there in the front line. Their offices are being raided, their officials are being detained, but they're standing fast. So comrades, if you can, please go back to the notice which Roger circulated. Even if you make a personal message, send it to Hannah, who is, a participant in WIN. It's ups and downs at the moment. Her health has been up and down. But, please send messages. Every message of support is so critical at this time. They're hanging in. But their website is marvelous. Tremendous tribute, to the ingenuity, of socialists under pressure. And there it is, all the latest news, and fearless. And of course, they're paying the price for that. So please, solidarity as we can to the REP union at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I would strongly endorse that. You can find the link to the website and also the email address for resolutions of support on the notice that I sent out. Perhaps I can send a new one out just to remind comrades. That's really important, and obviously that is part of the struggle of solidarity with the peoples of the wider region, including the workers of Ukraine and the workers of Russia, who are facing appalling oppression at the present time. Are there any other announcements? Okay, well, thanks, comrades, and see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Comrades.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.